Hello again, and welcome back to Channel 514 as we continue our series exploring ancient literature and as we continue discussing and describing Homer's Iliad. And this will be our last video for this evening, but in any case, we are moving on to Book 2 of the Iliad. So in Book 1, we saw how our story begins. So we saw how things are going badly with the Greeks because of a plague, because of an outbreak of disease, and how the two greatest leaders among the Greeks, Agamemnon, the leader of them all, and Achilles, his greatest champion, his greatest asset, how the two of them fall out and Achilles withdraws from the Greek cause and prays to his mother, a goddess, to contrive to make things go badly for the Greeks. And so now Zeus, the king of the gods, he is on Achilles' side because his mother, this sea goddess, is a special favorite of his. And so as Book 2 begins, well, during Book 1 we saw a lot about what goes on among men, among chieftains, and in an armed camp, and so how things ought to be done and ought not to be done, and how it's important that people who have entered into a common cause should try to maintain a sort of unity and not let things go the way we saw them go in Book 1 anyway. So Book 1 really has a lot to do with the camp and how things ought to go in a setting like that. But Book 2, I would say there's some of that, and there's some political thought, or whatever you want to call it, in it, and we'll get to that. But I think the thing that's most outstanding about Book 2 is the relationship between man and the gods. And so it's often noted, and you've probably heard it many times before, that the Greeks' gods, the Olympians, etc., that they were cruel, that they were fickle, that they were sometimes immature or just rotten when it came down to their relations with humans, that anyone would come to a bad end or have some terrible thing happen to them who offended the gods or hurt their feelings or bothered them in any way, or sometimes you didn't really have to even do anything, the gods just didn't like your face or thought you were having too nice a time or something, but on the other hand, they often do show in Greek literature and mythology some sense of justice, or their sense of justice can be outraged or offended in some way, but at the end of the and they have special favorites. They have particular people that they favor over others, but at the same time they're not really all that benevolent toward particular humans. So as an individual, unless you are one of these lucky ones who's a special favorite of the gods, and of course maybe not even then, you can't really count on them to always have your best interests in mind. And so they might just be tricking you. Things might seem to be going very well for you, but the gods are acting as a kind of evil genius against you and tricking you and leading you into a trap. And so that's what we see going on here, because now, of course, Zeus wants to bring it about that things will go badly for the Achaeans, the Greeks, and so he gets right down to work on that. And what he does is he sends a being called Dream. Really, he sends an evil dream to the leader of the Greeks, Agamemnon, and this dream, this being, this personified thing, he tells Agamemnon that he had better get down to work and attack, mount another attack on the city of Troy because the gods are with him. And so Agamemnon calls his his closer associates together, including Nestor. So this is the first time we've seen Nestor, and well, maybe he appears in book one. I didn't notice whether he did or not. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but in any case, Nestor is the oldest and wisest of the Greek chieftains, and when he talks, it's always in a long sort of geriatric monologue where he tells about some adventure that he had when he was young, and of course he idealizes it and makes it sound really great. And then toward the end of his big speech, he says something about how maybe it was all a dream, or how bad it is that now he's old, you know. So anyway, that's Nestor. So Agamemnon gets these guys together and tells them it's time to mount another attack. And they come up with a plan where they get all of their forces together, and Agamemnon addresses them and tells them that there's just no chance anymore at winning this war, and they're never going to capture this city. It's just too strong and too well defended, and they're too demoralized, and so it's just time to get back in the ships and go home. And so then Odysseus, the canny king of Ithaca and the hero of the Odyssey, who always has some clever idea about how to get out of trouble or how to solve a problem or whatever, he comes forward and says just the opposite, that now's the time to really, really redouble our efforts, you know. So he rallies the troops, he rallies their spirits, and they're ready for a big attack. But along comes this character Thersites, and here's where a sort of political overtone comes into the story. So this character Thersites, or Thersites, you know, he is one of the common rank and file men, and he's described as being the ugliest and the worst, and often in Greek literature those are the same thing, you know. So he's just this bad, rotten guy, you know, so at least that's how he's described. So he comes forward and says that it's, you know, these leaders of ours are full of it, and they don't have our best interests in mind, and we're tired of this, and let's go home. So he gets some people thinking his way and voicing their opinions, and so Odysseus then beats Thersites and tells him that he shouldn't be daring to go against what his rightful rulers are proposing and what they're ordering, and so that is sort of seen as Homer's single greatest political statement, really, that it's better for the rulers, it's better for the king or the aristocracy, but especially the king, that it's better for this chieftain figure to command, and for everyone to be ready to carry out his commands, and to have a single-minded unity about this. And so this is right, you know. So again, this is often seen as Homer's big statement of how he is himself a proponent of that sort of society. But anyway, not to dwell on that too much, in the next passage, they get all of their troops together. So everyone is arrayed and drawn up for battle. So of course they're all from different areas, and there are different forces and different groups of them. So they all draw up separately, and the poet then goes into a long catalog. This is often called the Catalog of Ships, in which he describes who all the different groups are, and how many ships they have, and who their leaders are, and maybe some things about the place where they come from. And so they're all ready to go now, and it seems like that's something that should rally your spirits, and it's sort of boisterous and proud, and it's sort of a shining glorious, happy moment for the Achaeans, but we know, of course, that it's all the result of an evil dream, and that the gods don't really care about these people, and they're leading them into a trap. And so, and of course, they're going to lose. They're going to start losing the war. The tide of war is going to turn against them. So the Trojans then are in their city, and it's of course described as a well-fortified town with big high walls and everything, and different gates that have names. So they're led by Hector, and his epithet is often it's Hector, tamer of horses, or something like that. And so he is the leader of the many sons of the king of Troy, Priam. And so he gets all the different groups of the Trojans and their allies together. And so then there's a big catalog of all of these people, all of the princes and worthies of Troy, and then the different allies of them who come from around the area, the Thracians, for example. So that is basically what happens in Book 2. Now, we've only gone for just over 11 minutes, so I may as well go a little bit farther now. But anyway, the scene is set now. There's going to be a battle. So Book 3, Fagles, he titles it Helen Reviews the Champions. But anyway, the different forces are all approaching the city, and they're ready to attack. So what happens is, the very next thing to happen is that Paris comes forward. Now the character Paris, it's spelled like the city Paris, but the city of Paris isn't named after this guy. It's named after a Celtic tribe that used to live there. But anyway, this character Paris comes forward, and he is one of the princes of Troy. He's one of the sons of the Trojan king. And the legend about him is that because there was a bad prophecy concerned with him that he would bring ruin or something to the town, they gave him up when he was born. They put him out on the mountain, they exposed the child, and so he grew up as a shepherd, and he then ran off with the wife of the king of Sparta, Menelaus, and took her to Troy, and that the war had begun because of that. So ostensibly that's why the Greeks are there. But anyway, Menelaus, red-haired Menelaus, the king of Sparta, is the brother of Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, who's the leader of all the Greeks. Now, Paris, because he grew up as a shepherd, the sort of idiom of this character is that he's frivolous, or he just likes to have fun. He's this sort of pastoral character, a shepherd boy, and so he's not really cut out to be a king's son and to fight battles and things like that. But he comes out looking good with his armor and weapons and everything, and sort of strutting or swaggering, and he's spotted by Menelaus, his deadly enemy, who sort of strikes fear into him. So Paris sees this guy who's out to get him, and he's afraid of him. And so his brother Hector then reproaches him for being that way, because it basically indicates that he's being cowardly. And so Paris then, he sort of he defends himself, really, and he tries to assuage his brother's anger. He doesn't want to really get into it with his brother, but let's see. Then to save face, he says that, I believe this is where that happens. Yeah, he offers to fight in single combat with Menelaus, the guy who most of all wants to hurt him and kill him, so now, so they arrange for this single combat, and Menelaus, of course, is about to win because he's a more experienced and powerful warrior, but Paris is whisked away at the last second by the goddess Aphrodite, the love goddess, the goddess of beauty and romance and all this, because he of course is a special favorite of hers, and that's why she helped him carry off Menelaus' wife, and so that's how he got into this mess in the first place. But he's her special favorite, so she saves him from certain death here. Now, let's see. So in the next passage, the king of Troy, Priam, is up on the walls with Helen, the wife of the king of Sparta, who is ostensibly the reason for all of this fighting that's going on. Although you can imagine that the richness of the city has something to do with it too. But now Priam asks Helen to identify all of the Greek leaders for him, because of course she would know, because she's from their land, and as the wife of the king of Sparta, she will have interacted with a lot of these important Greek chieftains and kings, so she does that, and that goes on for a while. She just identifies and describes all these guys. And now, let's see what else happens in Book 3. It looks like Priam offers a sacrifice, and Hector is with him, so yeah, they're all offering a sacrifice. And I see. I put the single combat between Paris and Menelaus a little earlier. It actually happens right after Helen identifies all these guys. But anyway, Paris and Helen end up back together in Troy because Paris has been whisked away from the battle. And so they're just kind of hanging out, and that brings Book 3 to an end. So I guess I will stop this here and be done for the time being. But Book 4 is another one with a lot of similar things going on to what we found in Book 3. Not the same things, of course, but the same themes are sort of carried on into it. But anyway, so that's where we're at. We're well on our way into the Iliad, and we're taking our time and discussing it bit by bit and step by step and commenting on it as we go. So we're going to be up to Book 4, so there you have it. And I hope that this is going well for you, and that you'll join us again soon. So thanks again, as always, and we will be seeing you soon. So take care.